sexual alchemy?
I don't know. To my mind is that they're very similar. But I can't say that well, let me say this. Actually, yes. What do I say?
Why don't we ask him what the sexual alchemy is, just in case anybody's interested?
Oh, just in case. No. There's one of the alchemical operations is called conjunctio. And Jung's biggest book, over 500 pages, is called Mysterium Conjunctionis. Mysterium Conjunctionis. And one of the recurring themes in the alchemical literature is the union. They call it the union of the king and the queen, or the sun and the moon. And it's, I would think of it in terms of energetic and yoga, the way I've learned it is the dynamic or outgoing and the ingathering of receptive magnetic poles of the nature. It's an energetic pole, not masculinity or feminine psychologically, but energetic pole. And we're bipolar beings. Well, bipolar electromagnetic being, and so the king and the queen come together, and you see all these symbols where the king is on the right, because the right side of the body is dynamically polarized, and the left side is receptive. So the king is on the right, and the sun, he's standing on the sun, and the queen is on the left, and she's standing on the moon. So it's sun, moon, king, queen. And there's a book called the Rosarium Philosopher, the Rosary of the Philosophers, which is a series of pictures and epigrams describing different stages on the process of conjunctio. Separatio, cutting apart, and solutio, dissolving the barriers, and conjunctio in different stages. And so I think it's in many ways, so the actual, in one of those stages, the coitus, sexual intercourse between male and female, is symbolic of one stage. So it's sexual. That's a little different than what you were saying. You're talking about the practices. We don't really know about the practices. Right. But symbolically, sexual intercourse, just like in Tantra, the sexual intercourse, it's not a pornographic picture designed to, it's symbolic of an inner marriage between different aspects.
But
does that make sense?
Do you have a follow-up question or something that you want more on that? Or?
No, I was just curious because it seemed that a lot of the Taoist literature was a code for the...
Yes, yeah, it may very well be, and I know streams of the Taoist tradition that are more philosophical, psychological, and then there are others that are more technical, and that's probably true in alchemy too. But okay. I would think just on off the top of my head, the practices were kept probably even more ultra secret than everything else.
Thank you.
For obvious reasons.
So who is next? Who's been ignored? If not, then we'll have fallback position as Jessica Shire.
But maybe I should take. I wanted to have just 1 minute before we end to say something about something that I'm working on right now. And we talked about it before.
Okay, Jessica.
You can stop me if I go on too long.
I just wanted to follow up on what you said about the Rosarium, which is. I'd be very curious if people here who are very knowledgeable about shamanism looked at those pictures, because I think the thought that you've developed here, that these are pictures of the equivalent of a shamanic journey, are probably, I would go with it 100%, and I never thought of it that way before, so I just want to thank you, gentlemen.
Okay. Well, Ralph, it's your turn.
Yes, well, to go further, a little bit further with this theme that I mentioned about looking at the birth and growth of this culture of consciousness transformation, some of which has been preempted and adopted into the mainstream, and some of which is, particularly the use of drugs and plants and shamanic practices, been sort of pushed underground, more or less, or relegated to the margin of New Age weird stuff. So not necessary to take it seriously. So, but then there's the part that, they react countercultural opposition to the mainstream culture. you notice that, and I'm very interested in the politics of what's happening in the country and the world at the moment, and I think I would like to suggest to you all and request of you all that you use your sort of shamanic skills and methods and approaches to help our, you're probably all doing this already, but I would like to, I've been asking myself, my own personal work is on that level. What is happening to us? What is happening to us? And what can we do? What should we be doing? And I would like to suggest that we're in a situation of extreme and violent conflict, escalating, dangerous, violent, murderous conflict all over the world. All over the world. War and genocide going on even as we speak. Not to mention the degradation of civilization into barbarism. When people are having academic discussions about whether torture could be justified in a legal society, that's barbarism. That's no longer civilization, to my mind. Or if you have tens of thousands of families living on a trash dump in Mexico City or Manila, that's not civilization, I don't think. I mean, I'm not from another planet, but this is not the way it should be. And the people get together, 50,000 people get together at the World Economic Forum. They've adopted the slogan, another world is possible. We don't exactly know how it's going to look, but surely it must be possible, you see. And conflict resolution, I've come to understand, requires truth-telling. Truth-telling. In South Africa, when, in the area of apartheid, which is a fantastic model of how to transform a culture, whole system non-violently. And then Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela agreed, okay, so what's needed here is this Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the conditions of which are the perpetrators of murder and torture and so forth could get amnesty, but they had to listen to the truth being told by the victims. And they could only get amnesty if they could demonstrate they were following orders. There was this institutional system that had been set up, though. And sometimes they got, and sometimes they didn't. When the Truth Commission decided, no, you were following orders, but you went way beyond what was required. You didn't just shoot the person, you tortured them for 8 days. That's over and above. So they didn't get all of it. But anyway, the principle being, they have to tell the truth. And that principle has been applied in other countries as well, in Guatemala, for example, but not in the United States. The United States is a state of denial. And to me, the biggest problem as a psychologist is facing this wall, impenetrable fog of denial of anything. There is, however, one very encouraging movement, and that's the movement which is called the 9/11 Truth Commission, which was actually started by a group of women who lost their husbands and sons and fathers. And it involves many websites and researchers. And the whole point is that there is, the 9/11 event is not what it appears, and it is not what it has, how it has been presented by the official report. Not at all. And the minute you get into this area, and we agreed we're not going to have a discussion about this different theories, political conspiracy theories, right? The minute you raise a question, you're a conspiracy theorist. Okay, so I just recently, just 2 days ago, because I heard a presentation by David Ray Griffin, who's a theologian, philosopher. He's not a conspiracy theorist. There are lots of them around. They're interesting. I read some of them. What the theologian does, what the Truth Commission is, they want the truth to be told. And what the women from 9/11 wanted, they want the truth to be told. There's nothing like a fact that to expand consciousness, a fact that you didn't know before. If you're confronted by a fact that you didn't know before and you let it into your mind, and you can let it into your mind, that will change your worldview more strongly than any other method I know.
That's beautiful.
There's a possible exception of confronting your own death or having somebody close to you die. So in that spirit, I now no longer identify myself as a conspiracy theorist. I identify myself as a seeker after truth or knowledge, which is the shamanic tradition after all. Right? So I would like to recommend this to you. And a group of people who are part of this 9/11 Truth Commission have produced a little card that's called 11 questions about facts about 9/11 that are not covered in the official report, completely omitted or distorted, and not covered in any other explanations except by conspiracy theorists. And these are questions. It's up to you how you answer them. This little card looks like this. I bought some copies. Please take
They'll be on that table over there.
There's websites, and maybe some of you are in this already. I think this has the potential for being, if it becomes publicly discussed and debated, if these questions are publicly discussed and debated, I think has the potential for turning this whole really around.
Well, I admire your optimism, Ralph. I hope you're right. Ralph is something, reminds me somewhat of the canary in the coal mine that the coal miners used to take in to let people know when the poisonous gases were there, and wake up the other people. And in that connection, Ralph knows wherever he speaks. He fled Nazi Germany as a boy, and he knows the symptoms, he knows what it's like, and we take seriously, Ralph, your warnings on this subject.
Okay. I have a childhood memory I'll share with you about what it's like to live in fascism, which I didn't really understand until much, much later, and which has made me hypersensitive to the creeping fascism that all surrounds us. And
Can you share that?
Yeah, I was riding in a train. I think it was like at the very end of the war, where we lived in Berlin. And I had a German father and English mother, so they were like enemy nations, but they were married and they loved each other, and they didn't consider themselves enemies of each other, not at all. So that was already a wonderful lesson from them. And so at the end of the war, we had to flee Berlin, 1945, to go west, and we were in a train compartment, and so it was 1945. It was not over yet, but people were talking, about. What will happen, what will be the outcome. And it was treacherous, it was treason to consider or to raise the possibility of German defeat. It was treason, you could be killed. And there were posters around that said, "Feind hört mit," enemy listening. So enemies all around, so don't, be careful, be paranoid. So in the train station, one man was talking about, if we leave and the English come and the Russians and whatever, then this and that, and there was this other guy, he was sort of looked military, but he didn't have a uniform on or anything, and he said, "Wie meinen Sie das?" Which is German way of saying, "How do you mean that?" It was the way he said it, it sent like this shiver of fear, like cold steel up the back of my neck. It made the hair stand up on my neck. It was like that through the whole compartment. And I only realized, I didn't understand, it was like 9 years old or 10 years old, so I didn't have any conception of what that meant, but in retrospect, it's obvious, because he could have been hauled off at the next train stop and turned in, and that would be the end. So I don't want our children to live in that kind of environment, do you? I mean, and it's getting close to that, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think that's the way to end. We'll have thank you so much, Ralph, and thank you for your heart and your help.
Now I need a beer.
The shaman not only sees with the heart, the shaman speaks with the heart. You're an honorary shaman.
Okay.
And probably more than that.